Well, good morning. Welcome to the ITAM kitchen. You know, it's the place where we get to have a lot of fun, have these chats, discussions to better enhance our skills, share knowledge with others, and do a lot more. So let me change the screen real quick and let's fire right into it. For those that don't know me, my name's Bill, Mr. Bill. I'm a recovering IT practitioner, hardware asset management, software asset management, configuration management, done a little of everything, based on inventory on up. So you talk about data quality, you can talk about how you look at the process engineering, you can talk about how you do enablement. It's more than just tools, right? And that's what I learned very quickly in life is figure out, okay, how can you have fun? And I have to say, I've now done it for 30 years, having a blast. I'm here doing this live. Yeah, I'm the guy on here with Daffy Duck right here on the screen with you talking to. There we go, having fun. And I also have Deanna here, one of our regular guests. I'll let Deanna introduce herself real quick.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Deanna Hennigar, and I've been, again, working with asset management for a real long time. Started out in the weeds and moved myself up.
Yeah, that's how it works. That's how it works. And this is part of our Treasure Map series. This is session number 5. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks now, and we're going to continue doing this on every Tuesday and Thursday for the rest of the month. And the whole idea behind the Treasure Map is how are we looking for our treasure? How are we looking? We talk about job descriptions. We've talked about how the value behind it. We've talked, and the whole idea of this is how do we get our messaging down? Right? There's one thing to do numbers, and we talk about business case. We're going to talk about business case a little bit further in the upcoming weeks and months. But it's in addition to that, how do we tell the story and interweave this? Because that is something we're never taught. Unless you're a good communicator, you've done this for a long time. It's like, what in the world do you walk into? And for me, I thought it was easy. I'll be pretty honest. Start my own journey on that. And when I worked for Flexera and started doing business cases, I realized I hit that brick wall. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm right there. I'm talking to higher level management, and I have stories, but I don't know how to tell them. I don't know how to communicate. I don't know how to make them relatable, right? And from that, the next 2+ years I was there, I got an entire PhD on storytelling, amongst other things. I mean, we do business cases, 50+ a year, if not more. I think I did more than that, more like 75 a year. You learn a lot. Talk to a lot of people, a lot of executives, on lower echelon, try team collaboration. You learn a lot. And that's where I think from a storytelling perspective, I think it's very relevant, extremely relevant, because you think about all the training we get, we talk about the process, we talk about the procedures, we talk about some of the principles behind it, which is all important, absolutely. But when you start getting out of the technical weeds, where do you go? How do you communicate, right? And hence, that was why I wanted to bring this up as far as a treasure map, because when we start telling our stories, and again, I'm putting this part of the treasure map, okay, finding that job, because that's also important there. But this actually goes across the board with storytelling. And we're going to start here. We'll probably have some additional episodes behind this. This is great. But let's start with the basics. So, Deanna, let me ask the question. When you first started getting from a technical role, being able to say, okay, let's better communicate, because you came from a training side, so it was a little bit different, but you still had that OMG moment, is the best way to put it, when it first started. Why don't we start? Let's talk about those and just talk about the story so everyone can get more relaxed and realize they're amongst friends. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things I noticed is that I taught technical classes, not necessarily fun classes. I had a couple of fun classes. And technology is very boring. So I took my teaching skills, and one of the first classes that I did teach was called structured cabling. And I walked into my structured cabling class, and there were about 15 men sitting there with their arms folded, looking at me like this.
We would never do such a thing. I don't know what you're talking about, ever. We would never do such a thing. Yeah.
Sure. And then, so I look at them, I go, what? You're already upset with the school, and now your structured cabling teacher is a female? And that was it. They already were unhappy, and they thought that I was substandard because I was a female. I proved them wrong.
Wow.
Oh, girls don't know how to cable. Oh, well. Yes, you do. And I think that's one of the first stories I like because I look at their attitudes and where they have been hurt before or where they've been very strong before. And you have to break the ice. If you can't get them to laugh, they're just sleeping or on vacation. But the whole goal was always to get somebody to laugh. So of course, one person didn't laugh at all during that class, or the first day. So the second day, when I started pulling out different sizes cables, and I tell them how many long feet they are, and I pulled out a pony cable, which is only about maybe a foot and a half long. And you know what you know what you call a cable like this? They go, what? I said a tease, and that got the final person.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
That's awesome because it's always those unexpected moments that just all of a sudden trigger somebody, isn't it? And you're right. We get as being technical, right? We get stuck in our technical weeds in our head, right? And we forget about the fun aspect. And when you start realizing life's about having fun, you put the fun aspect in there. It's the whole idea behind the ITAM kitchen, right? Where we're here having fun, enjoying, having the dialogue, being amongst friends, dialogue. And by the way, if you're online in the chat, feel free to add some of your commentary as well. It's important we have everyone's contributions on this because as Deanna was just talking about, being able to help break the ice and have that dialogue also makes you more relatable. Now, keep in mind, I've done Toastmasters for 20 plus years. My gosh, it has been 20 years now. And I did that on my own, figure out how to better speak and present, et cetera. It does more than just that, much more. So if you ever want to learn how to do that and you have spare time, and even if you don't have spare time, I do highly recommend it. It's going to be some of the best time you've ever done. They're very low cost, extremely low cost, right? I'll put it this way: if you have kids, it's cheaper than your kids' sports. Any of them. It's the best way to put it, right? Any of them. And but where I was going with that is when you realize you can put the fun aspect in your conversation and make it more relatable, that's what helps make you human. I'm just going to call it out, right? Because when you start talking about how you look at, yeah, you got the numbers, make it happen. That's awesome. But what's the result from those numbers? How's that being relatable? How's that going to help the rest of the team? For example, some of the things that come to mind for me, I'll give my own horror story initially. So when I first started speaking, public speaking, I was scared to no end. And this happened in 1999. Yeah, that's right. It was the Peregrine Conference. I was at a Peregrine Conference, G Capital at the time. And I had an opportunity to go present and talk about integrations, things like that, which I love integration. I've always been the integration guy, right? And, oh, that's right. That was funny. This is a really funny story, actually. So I'm in there. I'm nervous as can be, right? And it's been raining all day. You're in San Diego, so it's awesome weather, except for right there, it was raining. We had puddles everywhere. We got more rain than anywhere else in the country at that moment. And I'm there. I'm finally doing my presentation. I have peers in there, et cetera. My boss was in there. I had another peer in there, and we're out there. We're having a blast. And so I'm presenting. And of course, death by PowerPoint, I was the master of that initially. I will not say otherwise. We all have our different ways of presenting. Death by PowerPoint, make it happen, but made it so it's conversational. And then, this is a real story. This is about integrating between, it was Peregrine Asset Center and Peregrine Asset Center in Microsoft SMS at the time, which, okay, very prominent. Now, SCCM, Intune, there's all different versions of it right now, right? And for all sorts of different reasons, which is great. But keep in mind, I was back for SMS version 1.1, 1.0 when I started doing this, right? So I'm here talking about this in 1999, integration, and people are struggling with trying to get the data to work. I've been around it long enough, so it's like, okay, make it happen. And I start having this conversation with someone in the audience. Real interactive. I probably have a good 75 people in the room, which is great. And just dialoguing. This guy says, well, what happens if you cannot get your stakeholders to engage? Oh, and he's like, I'm having a database problem. I can't read the databases. And I said, well, the databases, he says, Microsoft SQL databases specifically. It's like, oh, Microsoft SQL, you're going to have a problem because of how the organization works, et cetera. It's like, I'm not trying to slam the company. It's a good product, but they've figured out how to tweak it so you can get that specific version back out. So we started continuing on that discussion. And here's the kicker. I said, it was a really good discussion. Everyone was enthralled. I was like in the middle of the room. I had everyone kind of following around me as far as discussion. I said, oh, by the way, I just have to ask, who do you work for? Microsoft. We all died laughing because the person in the room with the biggest problem was his own company, right? And sometimes the stories, I say that story, I use that frivolously right here, because when I realized that, at that moment, I realized I grew. I grew from the perspective of you can talk about things all day long, but even those within their own organization are going to struggle with the same technology, the same issues. You're all human, right? We're all human. And I leverage that because when you start telling stories like that, and I mean, I just went on air. This is totally, everybody can see it on LinkedIn. Whoever wants to see it, I just did it. There it goes. Microsoft was struggling with their own product, trying to just figure out how to manage asset. In this case, the licensing for SQL Server. Because it was performance issues, all sorts of stuff, which SQL Server back then had a lot of issues. But I say that because when we start telling our stories, I don't care whether it's technical. It got talk about talking from an executive perspective, the higher level business. When you talk about personal, there's a very similar nature to all of those. And we have to keep that in mind, right? But you also have, because your audience, you're going to have a different focus for your stories. I mean, are you going to tell, for example, you're going to have a discussion with your executives and from there say, okay, well, and tell them that Microsoft story I just told them? No, probably not. Unless, for example, where I would tell him that story, the one I just told, the only reason why I would get injected in the conversation is because he doesn't know how to talk to his individuals at that level. See the endpoint? See what I just did there? I made it very relatable. And that's what you have to make sure you put with storyteller. And you have to make it relatable where it is on, I'll say, the other side of the screen. We're doing a lot of video conferencing. It could be in person. That's great. It could be on a conversation. And that's important. And I'm going to note that up for a second, because you have to make it conversational and connected with that other person. Otherwise, you're going to go, you're probably falling flat more than once. Welcome to the family. We've all done it, right? But being able to make it conversational and connected, I will say that's step number one in this whole process. Because when you start thinking about that and just take yourself off that pedestal, it's easy to do that when you present, but you take it off the pedestal, you make it human connection. I don't care whether you have one person, 50 or 500 people in the room. That's what makes it relatable to start there. Deanna, you have another one? Let's keep going, because this is the whole idea.
Well, I had my own story. I called it Deanna's Kitchen. It's when I was teaching newbies about computers. And they go, okay, we have RAM, we have ROM, we have storage. And so to connect all those different items for what the computer was, in Deanna's Kitchen, I explained how when you're using your memory, consider it a very small table, because they had very, very small computers back then. And you wanted to bake a cake. And your cake, your batter, your flour was in storage, and that's the cabinet. Your RAM where you work, RAM, your random access memory, where you put your information to work, that's the counter. And if you only have a small amount of memory, you can't put all the eggs and the flour and the milk and the blender on the table at one time. So, and your oven, which is a CPU, is very small as well. I related the different parts of the kitchen to the way the computer works. And what happened is, by the end of it, I explained how with these new computers, it's now like you have a manufacturing company that can make millions of cakes at one time, because they go through a process. And that really did help a lot of people who didn't understand it, and actually helped people who knew very well about how to put a computer together, but it helped them to understand how to now speak to other people about it. And that's one of the best things about storytelling. like you said, it's relatable and it helps cement the information because, oh, I know what an oven looks like. Yeah, I can see how I could bake a cake in the oven, or I can see how I could put ingredients together in a blender. So that would be data coming out from multiple areas, learning how to get your relational database together. And it worked.
Absolutely, absolutely, because it is about that. That relatability is extremely key, right? And as technologists, we think that relatability typically for us, because we're data nerds, right? It's not the data, right? We think about data, and that's all we data, right? We're processing all that stuff, but we have to also figure out how can we humanize that information, right? And that transference of how we approach it, we're actually becoming the teacher.
Yeah.
We have to keep that in mind. And that's what we're doing as we're speaking, specifically with what in our space here. We're being that teacher by being relatable, by connecting with the audience. We're actually making sure that we have a listener or someone on the other side.
Yeah.
Similar to Deanna, what you just talked about, that one individual on the day number one didn't connect, right? It just wasn't there. Okay, I'm going to hands in there. I'm not going to listen to anything. End of the world, whatever, right? Probably a good guy, good information, but for some reason, it just didn't connect. It could have had a bad day, maybe stubbed his toe. The dog ate his homework. I don't know. But anyways, yeah. But anyways, it happens, right? But when you start going down this path and being relatable, it's also extremely important to say, okay, how can I leverage the information I need to transfer over to that other person? Again, what we're talking about a little bit right now is the icebreaker. These are the icebreaker moments, right? So I'm going to put that over here.
When you do your icebreaker, you're now giving yourself more credence. People now have a relatability back to you as well.
Correct.
Not just the data.
Yeah, and it's always fun to do that. And I'll give a really good story on the icebreaker. I did not expect it. I actually already knew these folks really well. It was great. I was part of it. I was in this office where it was a religious organization, extremely religious, one of the major religions that we have in the world. And I was in the room, and I think it was just the beginning. It's like, oh shoot, I forgot to bring the coffee this morning. And they go, do what? It's like, I realized, oh my gosh, you guys don't drink coffee. It's against religion to drink coffee because they can't have caffeine. But we all knew each other, and forever I had that as it was part of the meeting. Yeah, okay, Bill, did you bring coffee today? Of course not, right? Maybe the decaf, but that was it. But it was just the coffee and donuts, right? Trying to help meetings go along, et cetera. But sometimes you run into things, and that's one thing I want to say from an icebreaker perspective is expect the unexpected. Because we as technologists, we're perfectionists. We want it to be exactly right, to the T, dot the I, cross the T, and there you go. What we have to realize is we need to relax. Right? We need to relax and make it back to the conversational. We're trying to have a conversation, connect, and be relaxed. And sometimes we have to expect the unexpected and be able to adjust to that. Because when you start getting that and you're the receiver of that, it's like, oh my gosh, here's a new opportunity. Let's run with it. That's what I learned a lot in the very short period of time, especially with those business cases. I learned even more so because I had to figure out how to think on the fly a little bit more. I was horrible at it. And I'm not saying that to present, you have to have all this experience, 2 years in presenting, et cetera, before you start presenting. I'm not saying that at all. Maybe you're into it immediately. Maybe you're whimsical already. You just don't know how to transfer that whimsical knowledge to your business side. Totally get it. Ask for help.
Yeah.
Because that's the other part is ask for help. And I'm going to put that up here. Because when you start asking for help, or even say that you're a little nervous up front, you want to be careful how you say nervous, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you're trying to present something, you don't want to be nervous. Typically, that's not a good thing. But if you're amongst peers, amongst your executives on that side, and you say, you know what, I've never done this before, so pardon me a little bit. I may act a little nervous. It's not intentional. I can pay attention to what I'm doing, but maybe something's not relatable a little bit more. Tell me how I can further enhance if you have questions, especially for executives. They get it, right? They get it. It's like, because They grew, and they used to be in your shoes.
Yeah.
The human element is extremely important with the storytelling and things like that. Because when you start presenting and storytelling, and it's a little bit intermixed here, is you make it so they go, oh, you're just getting started, just like your third presentation and the first one to an executive, and we haven't met each other. Got it. Okay. Let me sit back a little bit. I'm not going to focus much on my phone the next meeting. I might actually cancel that next 15-minute meeting I have right behind it because I'm going to help you grow.
Right. Now, I have a term for this. I call it conversational psychology.
I like it.
Because we have to learn how to talk in a way that, though we're not psychologists, but using certain terms that help people to relate back. And how do we do it on the fly? That's why I call this conversational psychology.
No, that's perfect, because at that point you're getting to your psyche, whether it's your psyche, the room, the entire room, etc. You're on the same page, and you become comfortable. Just like right here on screen, right? If you saw me do anything initially when I started in 2020 and going live on video, I didn't know what I was doing. I've done webinars for 20 years at that point, right? I never did video. But since that point in time, I've done a ton of video. I've probably done more video than I've done presentation than anything else now, right? And being able to be more on screen, there you go. Because you just get more comfortable. You have to do the reps. But that's to your point, and I love that, Deanna, is that the conversation psychology is extremely critical. Again, that's the connectedness, right? That connectedness is huge. So as we think about these stories, the whole idea behind this, back to the solution architect, right? And what we think about how we present ourselves. So I'm going to bring us back to topic, but now we have a good foundation to start from, because we have this, but the whole idea is we're trying to present ourselves, present our position, whether it's resources, budget, tools, whatever, right? And we have to make it self-relatable. That's the whole idea behind that. So we did the icebreaker, make that happen. Now, Deanna, are we just going to all of a sudden just start dumping numbers on the executives when we start presenting ourselves?
No.
What comes to mind?
They don't necessarily want to know the numbers. They want to know how we're going to get it done. And that's the most important part. Well, to me, in being a database person, wow, there's so many numbers. 8 million, so what? We'll get through them all. And some of the data are daunting. And just, it's no problem. It's like how many gallons or how many drops of gas are in your car? I don't know. I only know it by gallons, right? But we know it by one piece of data, two pieces of data, and all the way through. And giving them a relatable, larger chunk. In education, we call it chunking and sequencing. Don't give it all to them at one time. Set a foundational story and then let them understand what's going on. Then you build on some data, and then you come back and making sure that they understand what they got, if they understood what we're talking about, and then move on again to the next. Just build upon one story to the next story to the next story. And that's a lot more, that's easier with the executive. But how are you going to handle this problem? Then you take the story in a different direction. Same story, same scenario, but looking at it from another side. One time executive goes, well, who cares if I've lost a laptop? Or who cares if I can't find some iPads? And I go, well, have you ever gone to the bank with, say, 10 $100 bills, and you put it in the bank, and then the next day you go to get back your 10 $100 bills, and they hand you 9 $100 bills. And they go, well, what happened to the last one? I go, I don't care. You just told me you didn't care about the missing laptop. You just told me you didn't care about the missing iPad, but I made it personal now. It's now, and it's all their money anyway. Every time they lose something or something gets walked out the door, we owe the money on that, or we already paid for it. And it doesn't get to, you have to find something that will get a hook and for their understanding and make it personal, a hook for their understanding.
let's expand upon that a little bit, right? Because I think the hook is a great transition for us in this discussion. Because when you start talking about our numbers, how we're doing this, we've done a lot of research at this point. You probably have 20 slides, and you're going to have the opportunity to present 3, right? But this hook, specifically the hook, is what gets you that connectedness, gets your point across, has them inquire and say, what do you mean by that? Which is a good thing. You want them to ask questions, because if you plan on just presenting and not breathing at all and expecting them to say yes, you've already failed. I'm just going to give you a heads up right now, because it needs to be a conversation two-way, just like this. It's just like talking to your best friend. Are you going to talk to them for 15 minutes and then all of a sudden expect them to say, oh, I'm a best friend? Brand new person, you talk to them for 15 minutes, and you expect them to say they're a best friend? No, they may have listened to you, but there's nothing relatable, right? Yeah,
With the credence.
Yeah, exactly. And that hook's important. And that hook on the story, let's expand upon that a little bit. I'm going to move this over a little bit, is because that hook, that's an important part to what you're talking to. That could be a failure. I know you don't think about it that way. It could be a success. Where you succeeded previously. It could be what's in progress.
Yep.
Right. It could be a risk. Right.
Yep.
And that risk could be an audit. It could be a internal, external audit. Especially in banking, you try to avoid that in the financial world, right? It could be a potential cost, right? It could be a significant cost forthcoming. We talk about software licensing all the time, and the reality is, are we really paying attention, right? It could be an efficiency. And you may come back and say, Bill, these are all value points. They are.
Yep.
But if the executive, that's what they're expecting you to tell them and help work through, because they're expecting you to help with this. Yep. They're there to the checkbox. And that's what a lot of people don't understand with the executive role, right? They're there for the checkbox to oversee it, because they have a lot of other tasks, and your meeting's only one of like 50 they're going to do in the day. That might be a little extreme, but you kind of get my point, right? If you have your hands on this and you can talk to this, they know it's in the right hands. They may ask for a different clarity. Go ahead, Deanna.
I was going to say, one of the things you can do is get yourself a relatable child story. The one I like is Jack and Jill went up the hill. So those are the people who've made it personal. And what they do, there's your process. They went to fetch a pail of water. And Jack fell down, which is a failure, and broke his crown. And Jill came tumbling after. So then you find a story that has a progression, that has a good, a bad, I don't want to say ugly, but and that allows you to set what you're going to say to someone. How do I make it personal? Well, when Bob went over to here, and this happened over here, and the progression to here, and you just map out exactly what they're doing and then show them how to succeed. So Jack didn't fall all the way down this time. He was able to stop himself. He got some help, and he caught Jill on the way down, and that saved the company.
I'm going to throw another.
There you go. Humpty Dumpty's a good one.
A Humpty Dumpty story. Same type of idea, right? It could be more risk. Okay, maybe you just got fined by IBM for $10 million a year before, and your executive said, we're not going to do this again. You find out we're about to do this again because the team's not been on the same page, as an example. And we'll go through some of the use cases in a minute. Yeah, that's good. We'll walk through some of the stories. Actually, we'll do that live. Because when you start thinking like this, it's like, okay, but we think about the childhood stories, right? Humpty Dumpty fell on the wall. Humpty Dumpty all fell down and couldn't reassemble again, right? Yeah, but it's important that we say, okay, here it is. We're not being literal.
Right.
We're being figurative.
Figurative.
But we
Yeah.
have to think about these side, how this is going to inject in that story for your own story. Because, and the other thing is, if you can use someone else's story, great, because you're going to see people present it. It might be myself, might be Deanna, might be someone else, right? Up here that uses a story, realize that that's their story.
Yeah.
If you want to incorporate your story, great, let's do that. But keep in mind that you have to work with your story very specifically, right? It has to be personal to you, whether it's work, personal, whatever, right? So you can tell it. Because, Deanna, let me ask the question. If you were to tell one of my stories, what would happen?
It's no longer personal to me. And I have to take what you said, make it personal to me or personal to the new situation I am in. And that's how you reuse storytelling. Oh, Bill gave me a really great idea. How do I relate that to what's going on now? And I changed the name of the innocent. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, it could be hardware, it could be software,
Yep.
wherever we want to go, right? So let's walk into that. Let's do something. Software audit comes to mind. So let me move the screen over, and we're gonna walk through one of these. And by the way, we're doing all this live. There's nothing scripted on this. So anybody do a scripted, great. I'm glad you're able to do it. We're doing it live. So you do impromptu speaking like this. You don't know where it's going to end up, but we're going to have a blast anyways, right? So say you have a software audit, right? Let's blame Microsoft. Why not?
Yeah, why not? They're a little small company.
Yeah, we have no Sasha today. Sasha would have fun with this too. Microsoft, you find out you're out of compliance because they decided to install a Microsoft project through the entire enterprise, right? And yes, I have many of those.
Yes, that has happened.
Oh,
Well, you bought a package, so you kind of figure that's in a package, but that's not part of the package.
so you got deployed to 3,000 IT users. A little expensive, right?
Yeah.
Between $300 and $500 a seat, 3,000 users, and you only have 300 licenses.
Yeah. Well, you're very overextended.
Exactly. By millions of dollars, right? And okay, your executive hears about this. And it doesn't matter. It could be a VP. It could be could be VP of the entire organization. It could be your CIO, CTO, anyone in between, right? It could be delivery. And your job is to figure out, okay, how do you solve this problem? I know we never run into this anywhere, right? Ever. It just never happens, right? So we've got to figure out a story and be able to better figure out how we can communicate this, right? Because what's the first thing that comes to mind, Deanna, when you see something like this? And maybe there's additional bullets I need to add here too that I'm not thinking of, but what comes to mind for that we need to make sure we're crafting in this case, the story so we can present our case?
Sometimes all stews don't need all of the same spices.
I like it.
Okay. And I do know I was involved with one company that did have this exact problem. But what we found out what it was is the people had the Microsoft developer. It came free. Project was free for the developers. So you had to go to many sources. You weren't just looking at your licenses. You're also having to look at a whole entire rack of spices that just happened to have that particular spice in the jar. And then we had to start letting people know. I mean, we sent out emails to everybody. You must prove to us why you are using Microsoft Project because it will be removed from your computer by this date. Because we have to remove the spice from the jar. And then see who are actually, because your Microsoft will come down, hey, this is going on. Please give us X amount of time to do our research, because you get a few weeks to research in a software audit. And sometimes there's a bundled package someplace. The first thing you do is you try to cover your existing licenses and the known people who actually do use it.
Exactly. So when you start going down that path, right, and you realize you have this happen, the executive is going to say, okay, this just happened. I need an answer on Monday. I need to have the plan and understand. I need to understand who's involved and how we're going to solve this problem and how we're going to communicate back to Microsoft. Just a few of the bullets, right, to put out there. And from there, where do you take the conversation? Where do you have that connection, right? So the executive already knows this.
Yeah.
He wants to figure out, how do I get out of this? That's what he's paying. He or she is paying us for, right? Is to say, okay, you have it. How are you working with a team to figure this out, right? At this point, you're talking about your stakeholders, right? You're talking about, okay, who are those stakeholders? Deanna, you mentioned several of them, right? Whether it's deployment, you talk about the packaging, you talk about going to end users, to different departments. You have to work with multiple teams, right? So I'll say stakeholder communication, right? Oh, by the way, if anybody's online, feel free to put yourself in the chat, put some comments up there too. Does not meant to be just Deanna here on the screen. So if you have any contributions, feel free to put up here. We're doing this live because the whole idea is how we're telling the story to walk through this. And this happens all the time.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been exposed to this yet, you're going to be. If you're doing time in the industry, you'll be doing even more so. So some of the stakeholder communication, something that's also validating the facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And confirming risk.
Yes. And that's where we now get the service management involved, find out why was this put into the package. And we have to do your 5 whys. Why did this happen? Why? And then how do we resolve the issue?
Yeah, because at this point you're resolving the risk, or you're confirming the risk, because it's also when you confirm the risk with your stakeholders, you're also identifying how they can help contribute.
Correct.
Right. I'll say what help's necessary, what help is needed. Because what most people don't realize, I mean, you've heard us talk several times in the ITAM kitchen, you've heard me say several times just in webinars, is the thing with asset management, a lot of folks put themselves in this bubble in the back room, right? That's the worst place you can be, I'll be honest, right? Maybe you need to think and work some logic a little bit. I totally get it. We all need our time, our space to say, okay, how's it work? I do it as much as anybody. But we need help from others. If we're the cog in the wheel, in this case we are, we're actually helping shape the wheel. We're also part of the solution. We need them to help contribute. And what happens, Deanna, when you come up with a solution that no one else is involved with?
You have to sell your story. You have to get
a story. Exactly. But typically people don't buy in on it immediately.
They don't.
Right? Why is that?
Well, nobody likes to give up anything, even if they're not using it. And I found that very disconcerting, but you don't need it. Yeah, I may need it. Well, when you need it, you can have the license for 2 months. You set out separate, smaller time instead of just having it sit unused on your computer. We had a scenario once at a bank where the people who wrote the software said, oh, well, if the VPs and the managers and all the C-suites are using these, all of their assistants must be using it as well. And so I literally had to go to every single C-suite administrator going, have you ever used this product? Well, no. Have anybody ever used? No, just they use it. They don't even know why it's on their machine. But they didn't want to give it up because someone gave it to them. And so what you need to do is get the buy-in from the manager. Oh, that's right. They were charging these $450 a month for something they weren't using, because they did do back-end chargebacks for departments.
Absolutely.
So you save money.
Well, you definitely save money, but the thing I find if I'm writing an entire solution saying here's what I'm going to dictate someone else to do, the buy-in typically is not easy.
No.
Right? If you work with the rest of the team, who those stakeholders are you're talking with, you have that dialogue, and you're collectively coming up with a solution. Yeah. I say collectively, it's important, right? At that point, they're part of the solution. They're helping you determine what that next step is. They're even providing recommendations for you that you may not have even thought of because of their own area. It's like, oh, I can help with that. It's like, really? Yeah. You just took a huge weight off your shoulders. You just fell on the ground. And that's like, you're going to take care of it? I'm thrilled, honestly, right? It takes a lot of stress off. Is that team collaboration is extremely key for things like this, right? And that's what also the executive expects when you have this discussion is you're working with the team. You're having this discussion. Again, these are not discussions you talk about within trainings. You're doing it right here. This is a training. So, but this is what you're going to find out in the real world is that collaboration. It's somewhat team building to a degree, right? I've done a ton of team building in my day for all sorts of different things, whether volunteer, professional, personal, whatever it is when you start collaborating on that plan with others, then the buy-in's there.
Because I was going to say, everybody's now working with the C-suite. You don't realize it, but we've now partnered with the C-suite. We've now partnered with the people who work for everybody, so they know, wow, even management is involved in this. You make it a higher order, just exposure by getting your stakeholders involved. That helps build the team. It gives a team their foundation for telling the populace, community body, the rest of the workers, why this is going to happen. Why we have a policy about this.
Well, it's also where, keep in mind, typically we're not talking to the CXOs, the CTO, CIO, CFO. That's typically not us. We might have a little bit of voice in there, but everyone is talking, they may be direct reports to these individuals. Yeah. But if they're part of helping you develop the solution, keep in mind, and this is what most people don't realize, those individuals, those direct reports are having team meetings with these execs already. They're having one-on-ones with them on a regular basis, a weekly basis, maybe a couple times a week. And if that executive asks them, it's like, how's this project going that Bill's working on? Because I'm a little concerned, concerning, et cetera. He says, I tell you what, Bill's been doing an awesome job. He's been keeping me in the loop. Yeah, we've got some concerns here and there. Not ready to put on your radar yet, but we've got the right team members handled. I've got the CFO. We're struggling still a little bit on that side. So if you actually can talk to him, you help grease the skids a little bit, that's awesome. But being able to say, okay, give that comfort. That's all the execs are looking for. A little bit of comfort from some of his peers or her peers. I'm not trying to be sexist. From their peers to say, it's moving forward. That's all they want to hear. Because then they can not worry about it. Okay, it's not done yet. I get it. It's a risk. We still need to have that discussion. There's money, et cetera. I totally get it. We'll get there. But I have the rest of my team working on this, and they can help in the background. That helps me because as the CXO, I'm personally accountable for this. And if I know my first lieutenants are working on this and I trust them because they hired them, I brought them in and they're helping me evolve the organization and building the team or building the entire organization, we're doing awesome. That's a comfort.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to keep in mind with the storytelling. That's what you're working with. I'm going to bring back to storytelling because when you start talking about this, how's that story evolving? Again, this is not a Humpty Dumpty discussion, right? Mm-hmm. This is about team building discussion. Right? It's kind of like the Three Little Pigs, right?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Three Little Pigs. We'll just bring other stories into it. How is everyone coming together to deal with this? The breeze is about to really come through from the big bad wolf, right? that's how you're looking at it, because when you start talking about it, I'm not saying use the three little pig story and tell that to the executive, by the way, that was not my point.
Yeah.
You might get that might be a good icebreaker, but I'm not going crazy. But we start talking about the team collaboration, that's key, right? And maybe some of this is, as it develops a solution, we said it's a Microsoft problem. Maybe you're on the phone with Microsoft trying to solve the problem. They realize they caused the risk. It's like, guys, I know you're banging on my door and you want $10 million. I get it. However, you help me figure out how I can help you get the results back, because your development, how you're looking at, say, SQL Server as an example, is painful. Mm-hmm. I don't have the right tools, and I'm not asking you to come and do my inventory. I'm not at all. But I'm having a hard time even getting results that you're asking for, but because you need to tell me how I can audit and provide the results that you need with your tools, with your executive tools. When you do that, you put them on their heels. And they go, hold on. Your sales guys have no idea what you're talking about. Some of them may. It just depends how technical they are. But sometimes those vendor discussions are also important. But from a story perspective, when you start talking about your communication, the facts, the part in developing a solution, again, you're telling the story. There's hardly any numbers being shared here at all, right? Because this is just kind of setting this is the foundation, right, to your discussion. Now, you go from here, then you say, okay, what's the solution? I have no idea how we are on the clock. Okay, last 15 minutes, cool. Then you say, okay, what outcomes? Maybe it's the plan. Outcomes. Right? And here, you still may not be talking about numbers. You might be talking about, okay, how many licenses you're down to, things like that, but you're not talking about dollars and cents yet. I didn't say that specifically, right? You're talking about who's involved, the resources, right? The collaboration. And the outcomes. So put yourself now in the executive's shoes. You know this, you've got it validated, you know what's happening, you know the team's developing the solution, that's great. Now you heard the solution, even though that scribble is really bad. I'm going to work on my writing on this better. Planning and resources, the collaboration, the outcomes, right? So what do you think if I see as an executive, what's going to be my first question for this?
Is it doable? What's the time frame? Because will Microsoft allow you to buy the 2,700 licenses at your regular price before they fine you?
Well, do you need to buy the additional licenses, or can you get back to 300?
Right.
Right. So you maybe also have that option. So maybe maybe you know that. But the other question comes to mind, and this is kind of where you're driving at. What's the cost?
Cost, yep.
And this cost could be licenses, it could be a resource cost, it could be internal cost. It could tell you have to know this. Like, okay, tell me what's going to cost, and this could be time as well, right? A lot of time, et cetera. And like what Deanna was just saying, is there something else missing, right? What else to put in there?
We can also explain what the risks are to the people. Because the management already understands what the risk is, but the people doing the work may not understand what the risks are.
Because they're going to ask, is it doable? What's the timeline? Cost? You may get down there in dollars and cents at that point. Okay, here's the timeline. Here's the project cost. Here's the tools we need to make it happen. That part of it. Extremely important. The risk is part of that as well. And that might be incorporated. You might have additional risks. put in place, and this, okay, give me 3 options.
Yeah.
Get prepared for this 3 times. That's no joke. That happens, right?
Yeah.
You've done a lot of planning before this 15-minute meeting, a lot, right? And keep in mind, you're close to 25 minutes at this point. So that 15 minutes got expanded by 10 minutes so far, and you got 5. He said, I need to leave in 5 minutes. I cannot get out of this next meeting, right? And he's like, I need something so I can go back and think about it. And the decision will be made today, but I need to just put this in my head, right? Because at this point, when you look at this with the plan, resources, outcomes, so what the risk, and you're going to do this for each one of those to say 3 different options, each one of them, right?
Yeah.
What's the risk? And he's got to look at the best of all scenarios. And by the way, the best of all scenarios is not always the cheapest solution.
Correct.
And that's an important note, right? Go for it.
I was going to say, when Sarbanes-Oxley, so SOX compliance came out, all financial people, the president of the corporation literally had to sign a piece of paper saying that if I cannot resolve this, I know I'm going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that happened back in the 2000s, and I like to call that, I use that example of Martha Stewart, and you may get some lovely jewelry provided by the government.
Oh, no, I know much bigger Enron. It was work I knew as.
Oh, Enron, the same thing. They
Enron.
commit
I knew
suicide.
it was worse than Enron, but there you go.
They rather commit suicide than face the problem.
Oh, yeah. And
That was-
you had a lot of that. A lot of that. But we're coming back for the storytelling as well, right? As we come to the last, my gosh, 8 minutes left. That's awesome. On the storytelling is you're able to say, okay, what coulda, shoulda, woulda, and you're having a collaboration. Because it's important also, we talk about speaking and presenting our case. And we talked about this in the beginning, right? How do you do the icebreaker? How do you do that connection? How do you make that happen? It's important to have that collaboration throughout the presentation. And honestly, if they start looking at their phone, it's a bad sign.
Oh, yes.
Or maybe you need to call us, like, come back, because if it gets really, some executives, they just love looking at the phone. I said, I know you're really stuck on the phone. I don't know what's going on. Maybe there's another time we need to have the meeting, because I really need your attention on this. It's really sincere. You make it very personal when you say that. They may not like being called out. I get it. Everybody's a little different.
Well, you have to do it because they're the ones who's going to have to bring this resolve to fruition.
Right.
And
And this may be a board decision. Yeah. Yeah.
because they have a board too. You're right. They have higher ups.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So when you start going down here for the decision, just figure out next step, right? Again, they may not be going for the cheapest solution for several reasons. Maybe there's a reason why they can't just buy a tool and make it happen. Maybe there's no budget. So it's going to take 6 months to fix the problem versus 3 days.
Right.
I'm being real extreme, but it happens, right? Yeah. And maybe he says, I go talk to Microsoft. Let's figure out where we can get more time. That may be the solution out of this. Even though you did all this work, everything, right? When you have all this happening, you say, okay, I need to go back to Microsoft and see what we have for a timeline.
Yeah.
Can you give me another, you said 60 days. I need another 60 days.
They've
That's
been
my
pretty good with that. Microsoft understands that mistakes happen. They do
Yep.
like to take advantage of that. But if you work with your vendor and work with your manufacturer, that can give you the time you need. If you don't work with them and you're a little obstinate about it, it can cause you a little bit more problems.
Exactly. But it's good to have that collaboration because, again, what you have for an option in those 3, we said 3 options, right? Your executive may come up with a 4th one.
Exactly.
And be prepared, and that's a good point. I'm going to say be prepared for the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
the unexpected. As technologists, we hate this.
I know.
We hate this, right? We want it to be perfect. We want to have the solution, make it checkbox. It's done. End of story. We hate that. You know, the best thing that can happen to you is that.
Yeah.
That's a blessing.
Yeah.
That's not a curse.
Yeah.
It's like, Bill, do you realize how much more effort that'll put on me? That's a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
And see, as technologists, we don't look at it that way because we haven't been taught like that. That's not how we were taught. We were taught about X, Y, Z, checkbox, make it happen, go force someone to policies, force someone else to go do their job. They have a day job too. They're human, just like us. They have their own, they have a family, more than likely a family. They have significant others. They have challenges in life. I'll put it that way, right? And when you prepare, be prepared to say, okay, there's something unexpected coming. You want this. It might be a hybrid of this. It might be all three of them combined.
Yeah.
It might be that fourth part. Again, we could go talk to the vendor and I say, I need 90 days because I need another week to figure out how we're going to solve this problem, right? It might be where he says, we're going to get rid of the product. How are we going to solve this? That happens too. We never know what's going to happen with that other person in a conversation. But prepare for the unexpected. I'll say additional conversation.
Mm-hmm.
More homework.
Yeah. And don't try to sweep it under the rug. It's better to work with it at face value than to say, oh, no, we don't have a problem.
Do not be a yes man.
Exactly. Yeah. See, I didn't mean yes there. I said exactly. I flat out told companies, I'm not your yes man.
That will get you in more trouble than anything else. That will get you fired.
Yep.
And you say, well, why? Because it's what they said. It's like, it is. But when that doesn't work, who do they come back to?
Me?
Well, what you did, I folded. It's like, I don't need that type of person in that role.
Yep. You have to be honest.
Yeah. There's a lot of technology folks out there today that become the yes man. I've seen that very hardly, right? That they say, okay, we're just going to check. I've seen it through the whole interview process. Yes, man. Okay, I can do all that. You put them in the project and they fail, right? So I totally divert our conversation a little bit. But that yes man mentality in our field, that is, yes, I need to get out of my role.
Yep.
I'm just being brutally honest on that part. Because when you're prepared for the unexpected, additional conversation, the homework, there's more to be done. You're being a team player.
Yes.
That's what that is, right? Put that in place. So as we put that spot, oh my gosh, we're at 11 o'clock already. We're having a blast with these things, Deanna. It's great. Let me go, as we look through this, oh my gosh, we have all sorts of content in here. That's cool. We talked about a little bit of storytelling, how you put it relatable, make it happen, have some icebreaker conversations in here. Make sure you have a hook. We talked about the different story types. We've talked about a lot of content, everyone. It's amazing what we can talk about in an hour.
Yeah.
And we talked about real scenario, okay, software audits, and just how the communications, how we look at the solution, and what to be prepared for. Even though there's all on one screen. Sometimes you never know what the board's going to do. There you go. Has a mind of its own. Hey, sounds like a project. But as I say this, the most important part is stay calm. It's easy to get overwhelmed, say, I don't know what to do. Raise your hand for help. So other people have gone through this in your organization. If you need help from a co-op perspective, hey, join the co-op and you'll be part of that too. Not trying to put a plug in that, but that's why we have the co-op, right? It's a private where others have been there, done that. You get folks like Deanna in there. We talk about that every week as far as the challenges, all sorts of challenges. We get some crazy ones that come through too. But it's also important to invest in yourself, right? Because when you start looking at things like this, and again, this is the storyboard, again, how do you put yourself forward? And we're talking about the resume, but this is more just the resume. This is how you do your job. This is how you do life. Deanna, 15 seconds. Anything you want to wrap up with this?
My last thought is you really want to be honest. One day I had to go back into school and I brought in everybody's homework and my dog ate the corner off the homework. So I had to tell them, I'm sorry, my dog ate your homework. If you did the problem, be honest because you're part of the solution, because you know what failed.
And with that, that's the end of the ITAM Kitchen for today. Tomorrow, we're going to have Rob back with us. We're going to talk about submitting resumes. He's done some homework on that part. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that format. I'm going to be learning as much as anybody. We're going to see notes for real time here as we're just like we did what we've done. Hopefully, everyone's appreciated. Please put your note or any comments in the any notes in the comments section if you're really enjoying this. Keep it up. I'm hearing a lot of great results. I was talking to another buddy of mine last night. He says, Bill, I love it. It's like no one has to always have time to see it live, but the replays are phenomenal. And the content is beyond awesome anything else you see in the industry. That's what we're talking about, right? That's the whole purpose behind the ITAM Kitchen. Deanna, I appreciate you being here, and I will probably see you on Thursday.
I'll see you Thursday.
Awesome.